Hi, everybody, welcome back. Uh,
Stop. We're here again.
we were recording on a weird day because, freak storm made it so that we couldn't record on the normal day. But we
It
are,
knocked out my power until like midnight.
yeah. But, uh, we were still reading the comics.
You
Okay,
don't need to convince me to reread these comics.
okay, so I, we were going over Sonic issues 15 to 20, and we decided that we were gonna only read half of issue 20. And
Because we
somewhere in the middle we're gonna
we
talk
don't
about
want to
the
make a 3 or 2 hour podcast episode. That's just it's not gonna happen.
yeah, but it's like we also wanted to include the special issue as well, or at least the first story of the special issue, because that's the actual important
Yeah.
part. But okay, so how about we just immediately just jump into issue 15? What was your overall
Okay.
impression of issue 15?
You know what? I like magical nonsense. You know, I think Ken Penders is actually at his best when he's only doing magical nonsense and nothing else, and nothing else. So I liked it.
Yeah, so the plot of the B side of the story, because the A side of the story was kind of lackluster, the B side of the story
The A side of the story.
is a
Ace?
yeah, is that there was a frog that Sonic saves from. Wait, is that no? It is the A side of the story. I don't know why.
I
Okay,
know. I was like, what are you talking about?
okay, other way around. My notes had it reversed. So the A side of the story is Sonic saves a frog and the frog gives him three magical stones, and everyone just goes, "What?"
Turns out the frog's a fairy.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, where is this going? Nowhere. It goes absolutely nowhere. These things are never mentioned again.
You know, that's the most surprising thing. We might reference the frog again, but I don't think we ever reference these stones again.
Like, like for instance, the like owl gets referenced again in later comics from like a few issues ago, and it's
Yeah,
like, but this frog and these magical stones never get mentioned again. I think, honestly, if I
there's
were to
reference
headcanon
to
this,
a magical frog of some kind, but I don't think it's the same frog.
yeah, it's like it's such a weird premise. And then the two B-side stories are uh we get a little we get to know a little bit more about Rotor and we get to know a little bit more about Bunny, and that's about it. The
Yeah,
the Bunny storyline basically is nothing. Giant Magnet tries to pull her in. She says no. They win. That's about it. And then Rotor
yeah.
is like,
Well, they make her they make her no longer magnetic, which is very important.
yeah, it is. I
Which I
always
don't know.
forget that someone references this exact issue way over in like close to like issue like 150 or something. It's like 155 or something when they just go, "Oh
Yeah,
yeah, she's not magnetic." It's like, "Huh."
yeah, which is actually really important when you're dealing with a supervillain genius who works exclusively in metal working. So very
So,
important.
the one thing I will say that is really fascinating, and in the middle of reading the story with the frog, it something instantly clicked for me and went, "Oh, that's weird." And I just left a note for myself to
Which
come
part?
back to this when we eventually talk about Sonic 06. And I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, huh, weird." And I was like just
which
reading that in my notes right
which
now. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." So in Sonic 06, there are these like
Oh yeah.
gemstones that you can equip to give you like weird powers, and I'm like, wait a second.
Wait,
And
what?
what do you know? The yellow
What
one is
did
for
I
jumping.
think?
But do you know what these stones actually remind me of? They remind me
What?
of the little orbs that you get in Sonic Heroes. The red ones increase like the power character's strength. The yellow one increases the damage of the yellow one's attacks, and the blue ones make the speed character run faster, and their whirlwind attack like gets through armor. Like it is kind of neat how it's like, oh yeah, huh. But it's like it's not exactly the same, but it does remind me how Sonic as a series keeps bringing up weird orbs that do stuff. But this is for like years later after these comics. And so it's like it's once again a moment
I
where
I think it's convergent evolution. I don't think
yeah,
anyone was thinking about that
I do wonder how much of it is
because that's insane.
I do I do think of what type how much of this is convergent evolution, how much of it is the comics get into the back of the brain of like several people in of the actual like Sonic development and going forward, because this does come up like a few more times in early Archie that you just go, I do wonder if that influenced anything with later comics.
And there's just no way to prove it
And I was
because it's
gonna
been so long.
we were gonna include 15 in the previous like set because it basically was nothing, but we basically ran out of time for that week. So now that we're done with that, we are going to immediately shift over to issue 16, in which Sally now has red hair and looks a lot closer to her depictions in the TV series.
I love the corner box gag where Sally's like, "Help! I'm trapped in a corner box and I can't get out." Great, I love that. 10 points. Free
Yeah.
her. Free my queen.
So the main plot of this story is that Robotnik traps all of the main characters into a virtual headspace. That's about it.
No,
And
no, yeah,
it's like uh we're gonna
with the
just
dumbest way possible.
so
Why didn't he roboticize them?
yeah, why didn't he robusticize them earlier? I'm gonna mention this now
And then
because
he
it
put
comes
them
up.
into the headspace.
Yeah, it comes up later in this set of issues that we were reading. But Sonic and Sally decide to get married in this virtual headspace. And I'm gonna bring it up in a bit. But for some reason, in the in the set of issues that we have a second Sonic and Sally get married plot line, and I'm gonna talk about when we get there because I have a little bit more to say on that one.
Oh yeah,
Okay, so the second half of the story, the B side of the story is the one I was talking about, where Robotnik is trying to figure out where there was a spy, and every single time he gets any form of answer, it comes with a very like cheeky, "Oh, who is it? I wonder." And then it cuts
I
back
wonder
over
who it
to
could
Sonic
possibly.
and Sally, and it's like, "Oh yeah, here's who our our master of spy work." And it's like, "Oh, huh, that's funny." But yeah, I always forget about this Great Horned Owl character. He actually shows up later in the Archie comics, and it always surprises me whenever they bring him up.
There's always an owl somewhere. There's an
Yeah.
owl in a lot of different versions of the Sonic media. Also, they can't seem to draw Sally's second eye like at all.
Yeah, the art's
There's
still a
that
little bit
one
weird.
shot of them talking to the owl, and it just looks like her face is slowly consuming her right eye.
Man. Uh,
You feel so bad for her because she got a color change and her eyes just don't seem to work out. Real sad.
did you have anything to say on these episodes? Sorry, on these
Um,
issues?
no, no, it's kind of like we're still in the part of the comics where we've got some stuff that will come up, but it's nothing we can talk about right now. Also, Sonic is in a suit, Sally is in a dress. That is all. That is all.
Okay. Issue 17. We are gonna skip the A side for now because I actually want to talk about the B side.
Oh, you
First.
don't want to talk about the vaguely racist A plot? Come on.
Well, it's King Kong. King Kong was already vaguely racist to begin with, but that's beside the point. Uh,
It just comes with the territory, man.
okay. So Sally's Crusade Part 1 is the B-side. It is drawn by Art Mulaney again, but you instantly can tell that something's up because it doesn't look like the normal artwork. And it suddenly
Yeah,
immediately
it
took me out
looks
of it. I'm like, this is what we're missing. We were missing this type of art style from the SAT uh the SAT issues. Sorry, the SAT episodes. I keep getting those two words confused in my head for some reason. I don't know why. And
also people are drawn kind of normally, except for the size of people's eyes.
if I
But
remember
you know,
correctly,
at least the proportions are correct with each other.
someone mentioned somewhere. I need to double check this. And I'm gonna correct the record about something in the previous episode as well later. But if I remember correctly, Art Mawini, now that I say there's two N's in it, was was one of the artists on one of the shows. I believe it was SAT. Like I believe that he was one of the people that sketched out the blocking, whatever it's called. Uh, I'm trying to think of the word right now and it just can't come to mind. Uh,
He did the thumbnails, the concept
uh,
art,
no, it was where they have that whole wall of like sketch art about what they want the episodes to go through.
storyboarding,
Yeah, they were one of the storyboarders
storyboarding.
for SAT. And I'm like, oh, that explains a lot. And now that it's more of this SAT style, you instantly start seeing art's style like come to fruition where it's like, oh, now I can see it. So this is a story about Sally being alone at night and
Destroying flowers very
um
quickly.
and she's lamenting the loss of her father when a mysterious object falls from outer space and it's a mysterious glowing orb. And
She ponders the orb.
and I immediately remembered what this B-side was because this is the introduction of Nicole from the SAT episode, the SAT storylines, and it's like, oh, this is how they get her into the story. That's fascinating. I completely forgot.
She can't just have her because the team who was making it might not have known Nicole was in the series. Nicole might have been a last minute addition for all we know.
Yeah. Uh, and it's like, okay, so this is a part one. We're gonna come back to this in a second. And it was at this point. that I noticed how little comedy was in that second storyline. And this is where uh, Ken Penders really does shine, is when he's writing drama. He's not very good when it comes to comedy, but he's honestly pretty good at writing drama. And debatably, he's good at writing romance. We will get into that later, but debatably, he's good at
He's a
writing
bit too
romance.
good. Yeah, well, if it so long as it doesn't have anything to do with Sonic, he's good at romance.
No, I was specifically thinking about a Knuckles issue, but like we will get to
Well,
that
yeah, that's
eventually.
what I was talking about.
Uh, in case anyone knows what I'm talking about, I'm literally talking about the issue where Knuckles has weird legs as he's going to
Which
ask his
time?
girlfriend out on a date. It's like, why does he look
Which
so weird?
time? He looks weird.
Well,
It's so
I believe
bad.
Ken drew that issue as well, or at least did the
Of
sketch
course
art
he
for it.
did. This
Uh,
man needs to be stopped.
but yeah, the A side of the storyline is literally just a shot for shot parody of King of Kong. King of Kong. No,
Hong
that's
Kong
the
is a
Donkey
separate
Kong
story.
documentary. It's a parody of King
Yeah,
Kong, and it's basically one for one. And
I
it's
got except there's some Frankenstein thrown in as well.
yeah,
It's
uh,
what if King Kong was also Frankenstein?
Sally gets kidnapped by the giant metal ape. Uh, Climbs the Transmobian Trade Center to show her the sunset, and then falls down and dies. It's not that good of a story. It's very much a
No,
nothing story. But the fact that they put so much time into this makes me wonder if it's like, hey, you wrote this B-side, it's not long enough. And so I was like, oh, well, since we're also writing the A side, we'll just extend out the A side. And that's what makes me think that it's so weird and elongated that it's like, well, the B side isn't long enough, so let's compensate.
well, that also starts to become more and more of a common thread that the A side is longer than the B side, and sometimes the B side doesn't have a lot of meat to it, and sometimes there's just no B side story.
Yeah.
Sometimes Sonic just gets stomped on by a giant robot for like the entire thing, and the B side is actually the part of the A side where he wallows for a tiny bit. But that is not this story.
Okay, so let's just rapid fire the ratings on the last few issues, why don't we? What
Yeah.
was your impression on 15, 16, 17?
They're all silvers. 17 is a low silver for the start, but this second story is a bit more interesting. It also has nickel,
Uh,
and I love me some nickel.
I was a little bit less generous on these stories. I only really gave uh I gave most of them bronze except for 17 because it had that final bit. But
Yeah,
I will say that like all of these pretty like standard as we have been describing in the previous ones, okay?
yeah.
I will say I had a full page of notes on issue 18. Like
Oh yeah,
I
issue
am
18's a minefield.
I am okay, so let's just get into it. So in issue 18, they decide that they are going to try to trick Robotnik into coming to a remote location. I believe that they have shown this location before, but it is some old like community center that was outside of I'm going to refer to it like it is in SAT-AM, outside of Mobotropolis before the collapse of the Acorn Kingdom. And they were renovating it.
And this place will get more use in the
Oh wait,
future too.
no, this is the place that they went to in that into the issue where with the shrinking down and the instruments.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? It's the exact same stage.
Yeah, and they decide that they are going to trick Robotnik into coming there to foil Sonic and Sally's wedding. And when Sonic and Sally revealed that this was an ambush, using this moment to take out a bunch of his more skilled badniks and a lot of his and defeat him personally. It is it is very interesting how this all goes because okay, so I was sitting there and I took this whole page of notes and I'm gonna just read this one for one. I think what happened
Okay.
here was Penders and Kenterovich both had an idea for Sonic and Sally get married based off of the actually no, wait a second. Probably not based off of that. And then they did both in different issues, and because this story doesn't have as many Pender-esque moments into it and introduces some of the video game based bots, I'm gonna have to conclude that this story is mostly written by Kenterovich, and the previous story, which has a lot, has a lot of Pender-isms to it, feels like it
Oh
was
yeah.
his idea. And maybe they didn't want to flesh out the story as much in the previous one to more focus on the virtual reality space part of the story. Because again, that's the Pender's isms to that. It does make me think that this one was mostly written by Kenterovich. There's even like a lineup of
It's
like
also funnier too.
uh
There's way more jokes.
the part where the bat uh the bat bot blocks out the
Oh, the
sun and
bat
creates the
in the
Batman
belfry.
symbol was very fascinating.
Yeah.
And then it goes away and starts talking in a German accent, and I go, no, that's not appendisms. He would do that a lot more. It's like it doesn't feel like it was written by Penders, which is the reason why I say that. And it's interesting.
He definitely had a hand in the character design because Hershey is here.
Yeah, I did see that on the wiki they even list this as the first appearance of Hershey the cat. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't want to say that, but man, does that really look like Hershey. Like another character looks
Yeah.
like the bird from the Fearsome Foursome that comes up later as
Yeah.
well, but just red instead of blue. And it's like, huh.
Hmm.
I wonder if this is where, Penders started coming up with like certain designs for characters to use later. Or if they were just like designs that were like sitting in the back of his head that he was using a lot and then had to describe who these characters were. Uh,
Yeah.
so part two of Sally's Crusade in the Still of the Night, which is the B-side to this comic, is so good I'm giving this entire issue a gold. Like I'm not kidding when I say that this B-side was amazing and is probably one of like Pender's better showings when it comes to writing.
It definitely is better written than some of the earlier comics. It's more cohesive. It's got a plot. Yeah, it has a plot.
Okay, so
And they ponder the orb some more. And you know I love Nicole, so
yeah, so the plot of this storyline is that Sally is told that her old
tutor?
mentor that taught her how to fight, how to like survive in the wilderness, and like how to like be a more combat part of her duties as a princess is dying. I don't think they ever say what she is dying of. I would guess that it's just that,
She's she's dying from old mentor disease.
yeah. And there's this moment
Also,
where,
they forget to color Sally's nose in a bunch of these shots.
and a lot of it
Like most of
is
these shots.
more of Sally reminiscing about her earlier life in as a like growing up princess in the castle. And let me see if I could actually find the page because it really did hit me when when this part came up. But in this issue, they are they investigate more about the crystal orb in the beginning of it, and in the next issue it fully opens. But at the same time, you could feel that there is a lot more. I want to say that there's a lot more tension in the air as they are talking about some stuff. It is not like something bad is about to happen. It's we've been going a little bit too long with it feeling a little too good.
Yeah, that something's about to go bad.
Yeah. And
And they are right. Things are about to go pear shaped real fast around these parts.
so Sally, after her mentor uh gives her like a speaking to, Sally is sitting on a stump looking up at the moon. This is a scene that comes up in Sad AM a lot. This is a scene that is later then referenced in a later comic that also involves Nicole. But Sally's sitting there, and Sonic finds her and goes, oh, there you are. Is everything all right?" And she says, "I guess I'm feeling a little bit lonelier tonight." And Sonic, in the exact way that he says, it's one of my favorite like lines of classic Sonic. He goes, "Tonight is almost yesterday, Sally, and there are many more tomorrows ahead." That right there is the essence of
It's a good
Sonic the
line.
Hedgehog as a character, and I really enjoy it because in this in this classic Sonic era, we don't really have a firm grasp on who Sonic is yet from the games. And for Sonic to be this like, hey, tomorrow is here. We gotta keep going because I don't know how to stop. That sort
It's
of
the
vibe
don't stop, won't stop
yeah,
vibe he's got.
that sort of vibe immediately settles in with me because that is most of his characterization in the adventure series. It's sort of like, well, I can't just stop now. I've got to keep going. And this comes up in the ending of Sonic Adventure 1. This comes up several times in later games, but this is the essence of Sonic. And for it to be the final page of this random comic about Sonic and Sally putting on a performance, pretending to get married so that Dr. Robotnik could get into a trap, honestly makes it like one of my favorite issues. And it's because of this
It's a
one
pretty
scene at the
good
end.
one from the classic era.
Yeah,
especially early classic era.
yeah. So what did you want to give this one?
I I think I'll give it a gold too. You've talked me into it. You've
So,
talked me in and a gold.
uh because this story isn't done, we have to now go into Princess Sally's Crusade Part 3, The Quest, which is the first story and really the only story of the in your face special that I actually want to talk about. Is Sonic and Sally are I think they're like classical fencing, like between each
Well,
other.
they're well, it would be fencing if they had foils.
Yeah, but it's like the whole idea is that they are doing something akin to fencing, but is more like they're just doing some combat drills, which is neat
Yeah.
because you never see this type of thing in um I want to say you never really saw this kind of thing even in like Sat AM. You never really saw like Sonic and Sally actually training with each other, which was kind of neat. Oh, that's why I thought that is because she's wearing a protective vest. But speaking of
Yeah,
vests,
so that his spines don't like saw her in half.
yeah. So
Not that the vest or the mask would do much.
so Sally is going through some of her mentor's things, and she finds her classic blue jacket, which she is gonna start wearing from like now on because that's the SatAM trademark of her style. And
Yeah.
shortly after finding a map, the crystal orb opens up, and it's the little techno gizmo that is Nicole. And immediately, uh, Sonic tries to shake it apart
Yeah.
and gets shocked by
He's
Nicole.
so impulsive. Good.
And it's like,
Shouldn't have been shaking her.
please don't do that. And so,
He shouldn't have been roughly shaking his girlfriend's girlfriend. It's not nice.
so Sally decides that this is a great moment using Nicole and the map that she finds in her mentor's stuff to go into what is known as the Forbidden Zone, which is a location that like is juts up against Robotropolis that Eggman's mechs don't even go into because it has high magical energy. And going into it, they have to go through like some SWAT guards, and it actually has like a minor little bit of like well choreographed like action.
Yeah. They actually have to plan stuff to get through as quickly as possible. Because they're
And
not trying to take the post, they're just trying to get to the zone.
yeah, they get into it and they have to go through like several they have to go through several challenges of okay, how do I take this out? And they even do the classic one head tells the truth, one head tells a lie.
Yeah,
Uh
there's like the robot Cyclops guy. There's
the
like a griffin.
they have to pull the sword out to slay it because it breaks the connection, which is kind of neat. And at Quest's end is just this pedestal that when Sally opens it is just a note telling her to thine own self be true. And this stays with her all the way through a time skip up until the future, where Sonic and Sally are now the king and queen of the realm. They have two twins. The Maximilian
Max
Acorn
is
is
there.
there again. Uh,
Yeah, he's alive,
Rotor,
which means
Rotor
he's
and
still
Antoine
alive now.
look a lot older than the other ones. Tails is wearing adorable little glasses,
Bunny
which makes him look not even remotely smarter.
and Bunny is
Fully
completely
de-roboticized, yeah.
Mobian again. Yeah.
And I remember someone saying, this is the best possible good future. And
Yeah.
it is kind of sad how they never return to this. So, this
Oh yeah. Because they
universe
make
where
choices.
everything went well creates Nicole to send back in time to help Sally to get through the harshest stuff. And it's really sad that they never go back to this universe because nothing ever goes right.
Yeah.
So there's like a few things else in this special. There's some like Sonic fan art that is shown. There's
There's
the
like a reverse issue
yeah
where
it
like
it's one of the
some of the text is reversed.
it's one of the first pieces of art that is one of the first pieces of art done by Spaziante, which is always nice to see. I like seeing Spaz's art.
Oh, it's so nice. Oh yeah, it's great.
It's one. There's also
And
one of
then
the
Tails
first.
goes to a kid convention.
Yeah. Uh, there's also like the first ever Sonic fan mail reading segment that isn't just, "Hey everyone, here's some funny comics about your letters," where they actually like sit down
Yeah.
and read some of them. Including the infamous uh dear Sonic Grams, my name is Tammy. I am obsessed with Dr. Robotnik, and I would love to go on a date with him. One of the Oh my gosh, if you
The
have never
most
seen,
unhinged readings ever.
if you've
I love Tammy.
yeah,
I hope Tammy's in a great place. I hope things are going well for Tammy.
I hope her desire for old men never faded. uh, but yeah, that
Old, deeply troubled men.
but yeah, most of most of this was dedicated to most of the special is technically dedicated to the quest, but there's a lot more going on to here. I'm gonna just list if we were talking about the special altogether, it is kind of nice,
Hmm.
but if we're just talking about the quest, I would give the quest itself gold, and I might even like give it a little like thing saying this might actually be my platinum of the
The
classic era.
quest, the quest is gold. The comic as a whole is a very high silver.
Fair enough. And if we're just talking about the quest as a whole, like
Gold.
it's pretty good. Um,
It's pretty good.
and
It's a real shame we don't get to see the good future no more.
so within like 17, 18, and then the special, you start noticing a lot less humor focused drama. And it's very obvious of where they are slowly going. And it's away from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog using Sat AM characters into Sat AM almost entirely, where they're using a lot less like prop comedy that you would expect from like Silver Age Marvel or like or even like vintage Archie comics into this sort of more dramatic vibe. And honestly, I think it's one of the best things that Ken gave to the comics is the sort of like vibe about like, hey, we're not going to just be a comedy. We're also going to talk about some of the more dramatic aspects of the series. And
Because we
Ken has
got an
said several
evil
times that
supervillain, we might as well use him.
Ken has said several times that like he's not a big Sonic fan. He's never played any of the games. He'd never really watched the show. He was good at writing, and that was his style. Is that he was disconnected from the storyline of the actual games. So whenever they asked him to do something that was more in line with it, he was able to take those things and just slot them in where it was appropriate. And this
And
Sonic
it
special really
definitely
does
shows.
show like how good of a writer he is and why. Like they kept him on for like I want to say like almost like 150 issues after this. And it really just goes to show like how prevalent he was in Sonic as a whole is that this was the style that became Sonic as a comic. The Sonic comic series from Archie. We might talk about Sonic the comic at some point. The Fleetway comics are its own beast,
We
but
have to. We have to, please. Let me talk about my boy with the swirling eyes, the madman himself.
yeah,
Super.
yeah. I'm not sure why I couldn't find an image of the special. It was like I should have been able to, but oh well. Um, so we are moving on to issue 19. So you know all that.
19's a fun one.
So you know all that fun stuff that I was uh that whole thing about the good parts of Ken Pender's writing. Let's talk about the bad parts of Ken Pender's writing. Uh,
You
so
mean way too much nonsense?
so right from the beginning, I'm going to list issue 19 as a high bronze, low silver. I'm probably going to just give it a bronze because of what I'm about to talk about. So,
It definitely could have been worse. It definitely could have been worse.
yeah. So, I have referred to the quadrants of Sonic's dynamics. And the way that I've been referring to it is that you have good Sonic and all of his timelines, and then you have evil Sonic and all of his replicated mirrored timelines. And then you have weird future and parody future, you know? And when it comes to parody Sonic, like all of the Sonics that appear here are all supposed to be parody. So when you see all of the different Sonics running around, they're like, "Hey, I get it. These little guys are a reference to this. This is clearly a reference to this." Like there was even
For 90% nonsense per volume around these parts. There's like a Wolverine Sonic.
yeah, and it's like, "Oh, hey, there's the
He's
Sonic
Batman.
from the Strongman poster from a few issues ago. That's kind of funny." And it's like,
Yeah.
but this is what happens in the story. Sonic, who is a cyborg, which is from a weird future, comes up to uh
It's from a bad, weird future.
yeah, um comes into their universe. And he says straight up, "Hey, my Dr. Robotnik is coming here." It's like, "Okay. So what is
Won't
about
be the
this?"
last time either.
It's like, the freedom fighters were all roboticized. But because we were half roboticized, we still kept all of our stuff, but we're now able to interface with all of his robotic tech, forcing Dr. Robotnik to roboticize himself, and he became Robo Robotnik. Robo Robotnik is a persistent villain that stays in the background of this series for a good while. But the whole idea
Yeah,
is that Cyborg Sonic and normal Sonic recruit all of these parody Sonics to go find what is known as the Giant's Hand, which will turn into a giant fighting robot once you take it over. And it's like, okay, so we need to go to a place called the Neutral Zone, which on this grid would effectively be Area Zero.
yeah. It's the dot right in the middle.
It's uh, it's it's uh, DC Earth Zero or DC Earth One. That when they go to it is all just like a barren wasteland
White space.
because whatever happened here destroyed their universe far before anyone could even interact with it. Stuff like that, where it's like, okay, so this is
Yeah,
a zone where nothing happens because it's neutral, it or neutralized. I was like, okay, what's the plot? Oh, Evil Sonic shows up. They defeat Evil Sonic and Robo Robotnik, and they send them packing, and there they go. Oh, yeah, it's all good. There was
yeah.
nothing that happened here. It's like, yes. So
There's
most of this issue is a bunch of weird parody Sonics running around. That's the joke. And I don't think it goes well.
nah.
And
They
I
do decapitate Robo Robotnik though. That is worth mentioning. They Cyborg Sonic straight up takes his head.
yeah, and there's this whole like thing about like, oh no, they Robo Robotnik summoned the giant fighting robot. Let's all like hit it at the same time to defeat it. There we go, we defeated it. Uh, I don't know. I think there is definitely a this comic was made for kids vibe. And
Yeah,
then I found out something
because it
specific.
takes up the whole issue.
Yeah, there isn't even like a really a B-side. Uh, like there's this part where you could cut out the little SWAT bots and shadow
Mm-hmm.
bots as they're
There's
called.
seek and find as well, and a coloring page.
Yeah, and it's like, huh. It's like that's interesting. Uh, there's this moment where like regular Robotnik has to work with regular Sonic for once. He goes, "It's like, no, I don't care if it's another me. I'm taking over the world. I can't have someone else come in and take it over." Which is fair.
Yeah, it also keeps the Robotniks in check from doing what Sonic did here in the future if they just can't work together.
Yeah. So, if I remember correctly, the the idea of this whole plot line was given to Ken by his son, going like, "What would you want to see in this comic?" Because Ken Pender's son is like a massive Sonic fan and really wanted certain things in the comic, and so every once in a while he would go like, "Hey, what would you want me to actually write?" And in this one specifically, if I remember correctly, he got the idea to include a bunch of parody Sonics, so that there's a bunch of Sonics on screen at once, which is fair, but I think that vibe is exactly the thing that makes like Pender's era of Sonic feel weird. Where it's like,
Yeah,
okay, so a bunch
there's
of stuff is
you could
happening,
definitely
nothing gets done.
tell when his fingerprints are all over the pages because it's just so obvious.
Uh,
And it's not a bad story. I mean, Scourge is here, so
yeah.
can't be all bad, except
So
for that one issue.
we're gonna get to it when we get to it in the next set of issues. But Robo Robotnik shows up in another comic. Canonically, uh, they are different, but they're also the same. And it's why I say that Cyborg Sonic is from a weird future. So it's one of these weird future places that it's like things go weird and wrong in many different ways. Uh, I personally would even state that at some point, the Archie timeline becomes one of those weird timelines. And
Yeah,
what we're actually looking
especially
for
when it gets snapped off.
is the normal Sonic Nexus point, which is the games itself. And going through these issues made me really think about how I kind of just don't like the multiverse stuff with Sonic, but I also am immediately fascinated by a lot of the multiverse Sonic stuff.
As personally a huge fan of like multiverse stories and like comic book stories, I love the idea of it. The execution in many of the Archie comics isn't the best. I definitely think other writers use it better.
But yeah, it's like you see this dichotomy between drama penders and comedy penders between this and the special, and you immediately just start tuning out a lot of the comedy. And where you're just like, oh, okay. Can we honestly, it's one of the more fascinating things that in like a few issues, we went from Sonic being a pure comedy series to it having drama aspects. And I want them to immediately go back to the drama aspects. And I think someone at Archie uh agrees with this sentiment. So we are not going to give a review for issue 20 just yet because we are going to talk about
We need to talk
the
about the whole thing.
yeah, we're going to talk about the B-side in the next episode, but with issue 20, there is something really fascinating that happens.
It's quite lengthy too. This is a long A side
Yeah.
story we've got here.
So Sonic becomes invisible because Robotnik lures him into an antimatter generator, I guess is the best way to refer to it. And when it explodes,
It's a nonsense sphere. It's a nonsense sphere.
he becomes
Techno babble
incorporeal.
zone.
Yeah. And while at first there's nothing really interesting with the storyline, I would say that is
It's more of a character
yeah.
study than
And
anything else.
like this is written by the Caesar, so the comedy is actually pretty okay. But again, it
Yeah.
feels weird to go back to comedy after the Sally storyline. And again, it
Hmm.
feels like someone agreed with me because the B side is all like drama stuff again, which is fair. Uh, yeah, it's fair because it's the prequel to the Princess Sally miniseries, which we are gonna go over that, but it is kind of interesting how because this is also the first real issue uh after the first Sonic special, Sally pulls Nicole out to like help figure stuff out, and it's immediately noticeable how more like um sad I am this story has suddenly become. It's just
I think someone somewhere might have watched snippets somewhere or heard his kid talking about the show at least as well.
let me see if I could find the joke because this joke was brought up to me. And honestly, I kind of enjoyed the joke too.
Yeah.
So the entire time,
There's a couple of good jokes in this.
the entire time, uh, Tails is refusing to believe that Sonic died. So they even have this moment where it's like, why does the statue look weird? It's like, well, it's because Tails is the best artist here, but won't make the statue because he won't believe that Sonic's dead. I was like, oh, okay.
which is which is petty and I love it.
So there's this moment where Sonic is slowly becoming more corporeal again, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay. So I'll just wait for the this to get over." And he runs back to his friends, and they left. And it's like, "Oh, there's a note," and this is the exact note. Dear Sonic, I know you're alive, so I left you this note. We're on the way to Robotropolis to avenge your death. Your loyal pal Tails. P.S. If you're dead, then pay no attention to this letter.
That's quite good.
And I sat there for a bit. I'm
Quite
like,
funny.
I was like, okay, that one was good. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, once again, we have a we have a we have kind of just a comedy story piece, which I enjoyed, but I just can't get into it because now that Pandora's box has opened of making the story more dramatic, instantly the comedy just does not hit as well, which is why
I
I honestly feel like that I've been rating these particular issues lower than normal. Like I would have normally listed them about like silver to high bronze, but now that you have things like issue 18 and the in your face special, it makes them look so much lesser because drama has now been added to just comedy.
you see, this is where we disagree. I dug the hell out of this issue. I loved the invisible plot line. I love how Sonic tricks Eggman into thinking he's a ghost and he's gonna haunt him,
I
so he just
like
terrorizes
yeah,
him.
I like
It was
Robotnik's
the
hair.
best.
I like his hairpiece he puts on because he makes fun of him for being bald.
Yeah,
Like it is kind of
he's just
nice.
straight up Elvis. It's great.
Again, we're
He's
gonna rate
he's
the
in like
whole
the Elvis suit.
yeah, we're gonna rate the whole thing in the next one, but it is kind of
Yeah,
fascinating. How do you feel about the overall when it comes to how Sonic is moving to drama? Because I would even say that it almost feels like that it's a sudden left turn that makes the entire feel series feel different now.
I feel like there's definitely some growing pains in the comic that it's gonna iron out within like the next, I think it's like 10 issues, because I think that's when the the first big arc starts.
Hmm.
Um, but I dig some of the nonsense though. I'm from a big superhero comic background. I like it. I like the nonsense, you know? Sometimes nonsense is good for the brevity.
Yeah, I would say that we're gonna get into the Sally miniseries in the next episode, but I feel like that miniseries is the growing pains. I feel like most of the problem that I have with the miniseries is the fact that they're like, okay, you want drama? Here's drama. And then it's like, maybe maybe not jump immediately into that drama. And it's like, well, okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that's it for now.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that
Oh, I
is
think this was a badder batch than the last ones, especially with where we ended on the last issue.
yeah. And one of the things that I do one of the things that I find fascinating to me, and we are going to get into it later on, is we already did the crossover with Knuckles, right? We already did that one. Yes. Okay.
Um,
Because
do
the
you
whole
mean the one where Kintarovich, I believe, flexes his knowledge of the games?
yes, where it's like, oh hey, here's Knuckles. Knuckles is now a character in the story. I
Yeah.
okay, so after recording that previous episode, I actively went back to read something very specific. And while the comic itself is not based around the actual game and almost feels like a truncated version of Sonic 3, do you know what, oddly enough, had a really close approximation to how the game feels?
Which one?
The Fleetway issues around Sonic
Oh,
3.
yes.
And
Yes.
I went back to
Probably because they were allowed to show more teeth.
uh it's fascinating because
They
in
they they were allowed to kill people, man. People died in that series. It'll be
uh
great.
I will say that we will talk about the Fleetway issues, but I actually kind of like how they actually lean
Gotta.
into Sonic 3 and how they lean into Sonic CD. I personally kind of like them. And
They
I
lean
feel
so
like
hard.
the way that Archie did their tie-ins is oddly bare-boned to
Oh, it's the most bare bone.
where it's like single
It's
issue
like
we're not going to
it's
actually
like
talk
they
about the
post
game,
up the stuff. Hmm.
but
It's like they like put up a sign with like an arrow saying "game here." Rest of the story on the other side, and then they never look back,
and
except
then
occasionally when suddenly the team has hoverboards.
so
We never see them use them. They just have them.
for instance, in the Fleetway story, when we eventually do get to it, in the Fleetway Sonic issues, they blatantly say that there are 6 Chaos Emeralds because that's the amount that there were in the first game. And when the Master Emerald shows up, the Master Emerald becomes the 7th Emerald. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So you have one giant green emerald, and then you have 6 smaller emeralds that all are different aspects of the chaos. And it's like,
Hmm.
that's
And
neat.
chaos is a bigger deal in Fleetway too.
Um, it is kind of interesting because in the Fleetway issues, the adventure storyline is the last storyline in Fleetway
Yeah,
Sonic. And so they basically
I
went out
mean
with a bang on
technically
that one.
yes.
And we could get to that later, but I feel like when it comes to the Fleetway issues, because Sonic the Comic was more of a Sega magazine, which they had a lot of crossover from like other Sega properties. They It really did feel like that the people working on that cared a lot more about the games.
Oh
And
yeah, probably because they played them.
uh
Heaven forbid the main writer on the staff actually knows what goes on in the games. Heaven forbid. Can't
and
have that.
and again, we could go over that later.
Can't have that in a nice American comic.
We could go over Fleetway later, but I don't know. I feel like
Soon.
looking back
Soon,
onto
my dear, soon.
looking back over the way that certain things are adapted really does make me think that Fleetway is what if Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog had the games as its thematic like through line, and the Sonic Archie comics are what if Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog had the uh had Sat AM as the dramatic through line. So when we start getting into more drama stuff around the Archie comics, it starts looking a lot more like Sat AM. When drama starts coming up in the Fleetway comics, it starts looking more like a horror show, in the best possible way.
It'll be so much fun. It'll
Uh,
be great.
well, either way,
Tails will never sleep right again.
uh,
Yeah,
I I feel like that's good enough for now. Any final thoughts on what we went over?
yeah. I liked these comics. I won't say I loved them. That's reserved for a different story arc where I will gush and I will take the mic from you, but we'll get there in about 10 issues, I think.
In
That mic is mine.
Okay, so anyway, we'll see all y'all next time. Goodbye.
All right, see you guys. Bye.